So what's up to all my beautiful queens, divas of a more mature age? I am the Eva Monroe. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel today for this very candid discussion. We're going to talk about May-December relationships today because y'all asked for it. So I'm going to share with you guys the 5 most important things that you need to think about before you date an older man. Date, marry, shack up. And when I say older, I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm not even talking about 10 years. There is a 28-year age gap between myself and my husband. So I'm speaking from experience here today. So disclaimer, these are just my views and opinions, but this is also my life. So I thought back, I was thinking about it was like 87, I think. But I probably didn't start rocking to the song until later. Keith Sweat came out with the song, You may be young, but you're ready. And then after that, here come Aaliyah rocking her little cute little hips talking about age ain't nothing but a number. So I took all that and I put 2 and 2 together and I was like, well, shoot, I could date an older man because I'm young and I'm ready. You live and you learn, right? So 5 most important things that you need to think about. Let's jump right in, ladies. The very first thing that you really should think about before dating a man who is so much more older than you is compatibility. Oh, compatibility. That is really the most important thing that you need to think about. How much does a 70-year-old and a 40-year-old have in common? How compatible can you guys really be? And I know this is going to sound gross, but how compatible are you with your grandfather? You have to think about that. Even though it's a different type of relationship, but it's the same thing. How long could you sit and talk and have heartfelt discussions and conversations and intimate discussions, deep things, talking about things that you're into, things you love, things you're involved in with your grandfather? Not long. You can probably sit and have a conversation with him about things that he is into for an extended period of time, but he will have a very hard time coming down to your level. So compatibility is huge. When you have these types of relationships, like let's say 70 is here and 40 is here. Now that don't necessarily mean mental, because some 70s is here mentally and some 40s might be here. But when you have a 70-year-old and a 40-year-old, either one of 2 things has to happen. He either has to come here or she has to come here. Now, when he comes here, he looks crazy, right? Let's just be honest. He looks crazy. We know these men. They running around in jerseys. They still up on the latest J's. They probably drive something that the top can be removed from. They still walk with a limp and a pimp. Talking about, hey, little mama, they look silly. Okay. If there's any 70-year-old man watching who behaves like that, you look crazy, just so you know. But the woman, she can come up here and she can look okay being up here. She can hang out with his friends because it doesn't look bad for a younger person to be hanging out with older people, but it looks crazy for an older person to hang out with younger people. Doesn't look that bad for a younger person to do what older people do, but it looks crazy for older people when they're doing stuff that young people do. So when he comes here, he looks crazy. When she comes here, she typically is getting the youth sucked out of her, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And it's something that eventually she will grow weary of. So compatibility is huge. It's way past huge. Now, the second thing that you really need to think about is how hungry are you for growth and change? Are you still thinking about your 401k? You still thinking about your next career move? Maybe you want to go back and get another degree. You thinking about some more places that you haven't traveled to, the still parts of the world you want to see. You still want to do things. How hungry are you for growth and change? Because 9 times out of 10, when you are with someone who is so much more older than you, they cool over here. They all right. They like, shit, my 401k is good. I done seen everything I want to see. I ain't been to school since I was 16. What do you need to do that for? That's a conflict of interest. Okay. So if that's your story and you still moving about through life, dating someone older or marrying someone older is not going to be the thing for you to do. Now, are there some Decembers? We'll call them Decembers. Are there some Decembers who are like, "Hey, live your life. Do you go back to school? Yes, your 401k is important. You must see the world. You must start." Absolutely. And they're like, "I'll be sitting right here waiting for you." But in a marriage is a partnership, and people in a marriage are supposed to be moving in the same direction most of the time, right? So if you have somebody over here who's going like this, they moving about through life, and you have somebody over here who's sitting still, that's a conflict of interest, right? And typically those two people will probably end up living at different addresses eventually, because one person is either going to outgrow the other person, or the other person is going to get tired of being alone while the other person is moving about so freely through life. So how hungry are you for growth and change? That's very important. You have to think about that. Now, the third thing, another very important thing that you must think about is your sexual appetite. It's important. I'm not talking about your partner's sexual appetite. I'm not talking about how much he threw down the first night he got it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, what is your sexual appetite like? Are you still very much a hot chick? Like, do you still desire to be swung from the chandeliers? Are you still very active? Are you in the prime of your life? Like, yeah, you know, what is your sexual appetite like? Because when we're with somebody for the first time, they go all out. Men, y'all do that. And y'all know, y'all pull out all the stops, y'all do everything. And then by the third time, you like, well, what happened to the last time when? So a man who is of a more mature age, even though he may be telling his friends, "Oh, I be breaking it on down, I be handling that," mentally, he knows that he will not be able to do that on a consistent basis, and you better know it too. I don't care how many little blue pills he has in his collection. I don't care how much surgery he has had. He will not be able to do that on a consistent basis, which causes problems. It's going to cause problems with a lot of things. It's going to leave the woman or the younger individual feeling empty, without, frustrated, confused. And it's going to bring about some insecurities for the older person, because he knows it doesn't matter how much he pretends to not know. He knows that he is not doing what these 30 and 40-year-olds are out here doing anymore. He knows this. So it's going to bring about some insecurities. And in the beginning of the relationship, it may not be evident to him. He may not be real with himself about it. Sometimes men are not, and this is just my opinion as well, but I have felt this along the way. They're not always so honest with themselves about their current physical well-being or whatever. True story, my husband and I were in Saks Fifth Avenue one day. And I was at the fragrance counter and I was smelling some fragrances. And my husband, he couldn't have been less interested in what I was doing. So he was people watching. And he starts nudging me in my side. And I'm like, what? Yeah, what is it? And he's like, so I looked into the direction that he was doing this. And I saw an older gentleman, approximately his age, walking our way with a woman who was approximately my age. And I just rolled my eyes. I was like, okay, that's nice. Now back to this. How much is this again? So I wanted to ask him about it later on, but I didn't even say anything. It slipped my mind. I was worried about my new fragrance. I was probably trying to get home and share it with y'all. Then we were at the boat dock one day and he did the same thing. I saw a gentleman who was hooking his boat up to his truck, but I didn't think anything about it. He's like, you see that? You see that? Like, look, 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 look. And I looked and there was a woman who was approximately my age and the man was approximately his age. And I was like, okay. So I stopped dead in my tracks. I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah, sure. I said, do you think you look as young as I do or I look as old as you do? We need to clear this up right now. And he said, I don't look old. I don't even look my age. And I was like, I said, okay, so you don't think people look at us like that? And he said, no, people don't look at us like that. And it all got real clear to me at that moment. It got really clear to me. And when my friend and I were talking about it, I told her about it. I had to. She said, girl, you know, men don't ever see themselves for what they are. It takes a long time for that to happen. So yeah, be real with yourself and the other individual about the sexual appetite of both parties in the relationship. Because I can guarantee you this right here, when he gets to an age to where he just can't do it no more, he is not going to give you permission to go out and do it. So you are going to be not doing it anymore as well. So think about that. And I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. Now, the next thing that you really need to think about, number 4, is, can you care for someone? Are you willing to be a caretaker? Now, you got to think about this in any marriage, because in a relationship where both parties are 30 years old, somebody can fall ill instantly. That can happen to anybody, and the other person has to be willing to take care of them. But in this type of relationship, you really got to think about that. You have to be real with yourself about that. You have to say, okay, you know, he is 70. So if he gets dementia or if he, you know, falls ill, do I have the wherewithal in me? Do I love him enough? Am I able to be his caretaker? You really have to think about that. And a lot of people don't, but it's real. And then, like I said, in all relationships, but in this relationship, you really need to think about that, because again, it could be in reverse order, but think about it. Now, the last thing, number 5, that you really need to think about is children. Do you want to have children? Do you desire to have children? Are you still of childbearing years? Even if you are dating a man who is in his 60s, in his 70s, even if he could still get you pregnant, you would probably be living your life as a single mother, because a 70-year-old does not have the wherewithal to chase a toddler. They just don't have that in them. They can't do soccer practice. They're not going to be able to run tackle football practice with your 4-year-old. They don't have it in them to do that. So you have to take that into consideration. You have to take into consideration the fact that if you have a child with someone who is 70 years old, when that child is 10, they will be 80. You have to think about that. So those are just 5 things that you really want to think about before getting involved in a May-December relationship. Are there pros? There are, but there's so few of them that I didn't even feel that they needed to be mentioned in this video. These, I feel, are the most important things that especially we as women need to think about before we take on these type of relationships. So thank you guys so much for listening to me today. Until I see you again, be blessed and bye for